there's a little box. I could probably make it more specific, make it easier for me to go to pull this up. It'll have a certain label on into that. Don't you love it when I talk about things that make absolutely no sense to you because you can't see that screen? Helpful. So, Alyssa, did you spend any time trying to figure out what the picture was that I shared?
No, was there something like specific to it?
No, I just put a picture there to.
Oh no, it was eye-catching.
Yeah, it's a great picture. Um, I just figured if I put a pretty picture, then people are more likely to notice it.
Absolutely. Mom would recommend that it have either a kitten or a dog face in it though.
Yeah, there you go. Or a girl in a bikini.
There you go. Perfect. Fun theme.
Yes. Anyway, well, welcome to one and all. We are picking up where we left off in Matthew 12. And I do advise that as you're watching, that you stop, just hit pause, pop open your Bible, YouVersion, whatever you use, and read the first 32 chapters of Matthew, because this just continues with the thought. We just came off of the Jews, the Pharisees and Sadducees accusing him of casting out demons with the power of Beelzebul, the Lord of hell. And he talked to them, and his refutation to them revolved around the sin against the Holy Spirit, that you don't want to go there. You don't want to resist that way. But we do. A big part of what we see here, and we see it everywhere in all kinds of ways, it is inescapable. There is the spiritual warfare that goes on between unbelievers and God. We have the struggle as believers. We still resist his will. Think about that in your own life. Just spend a minute thinking about that. How much time you deal with that struggle of resisting God's will, thinking, well, that may be God's will for me, but I really don't want to go down that road. Thoughts like that. We have that struggle. If that's the case with us, then what about unbelievers? The the animosity, the hatred toward God is huge. And we see it here. There's a power struggle on all kinds of levels. The Jewish leaders, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Herodians, the scribes. There, I threw out the big four. Let's cover that real quick because I know it gets confusing. And it's kind of like, oh, Church 101, you're supposed to know that. Well, everybody forgets it. So let's start with the Sadducees. The Sadducees were, for lack of a better term, just to make it easier to comprehend, they were a political group, a party, a clan, and they were the priests. The high priests were all Sadducees, the whole clan. They controlled it. To become high priest, you had to be a Sadducee. And here's the crazy thing, they didn't believe in heaven. They didn't believe in life after death. They didn't believe in any of that. Kind of crazy, hard to get your mind around. Um, then there are the Pharisees. Those are the two groups you see most often, and most often it's the Pharisees. The Pharisees were laymen, they were not priests. The Pharisees were wealthy, very well educated, knowledgeable, religious, by our standards today, zealots, fanatics, but very highbrow about it. And they had a great deal of sway, a great deal of power in many ways outside of the confines of the temple complex, which is huge. Google Herod's temple. It's impressive. Okay. Outside of that, they had sway, but not as much as the Pharisees. Okay. The Pharisees supported, for the most part, the scribes. The scribes were the guys who were allowed. They were the experts. They're also called the experts in the law. Okay. When it says experts of the law, they're talking about the Torah, the word. Okay. And that even gets thrown around in various ways. But they were the guys who were allowed to make copies of the Bible. There was a guild of the scribes, and it wasn't easy to get into, and their standards were, well, absolute and fanatical. You couldn't make mistakes, but they also memorized it. But in order to do that and spend all their time doing that, you had to have a patron. You had to have someone who was supporting you. And so the Pharisees and the scribes, if you just go through, every time you see Pharisees, very often it'll say scribes and Pharisees or Pharisees and scribes. Okay. The Pharisees and the Sadducees hated each other. Hated each other. Think Joe Biden and Donald Trump. They did not like each other. Okay. The Sanhedrin was the ruling council of 70. Of 70. Sound familiar? There were 70 elders who went up on the mountain with Moses. The Sanhedrin was the ruling council of the Jews, and they had a lot of power. Rome was there, Rome ruled, but Rome operated with the Jews, and they operated this way in a lot of places. As long as you do what we want you to do, as long as you pay your taxes, as long as you are obedient and you don't rebel and there's no insurrection, we'll let you take care of the lesser things. Okay. They couldn't kill anybody. They couldn't execute anybody. We see that with Jesus' trial. But everything else, we'll pretty much let you take care of. It was a good system of governance when you had an empire. Let them take care of the little stuff. You deal with the big stuff. Okay. But that was done through the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin, if you were in the Sanhedrin, you had a lot of power. It will also be referenced to as the council. Okay. The other group, they don't come up very often until the very end when everybody's ganging up on Jesus, are the Herodians. They were Jews who supported Herod and basically thereby supported Rome. Okay, just a different political group. Nobody liked them. But at the end, you see that even they are ganging up along with the Pharisees and the Sadducees against Jesus, trying to trick him. So when it says that they come together with the Herodians, everybody knew that, okay, the weirdo meter just spiked at about an 8 or a 9 because these guys don't do anything together. You know, enemies make strange bedfellows, all of that. So all of that, just because I know we blow past the Pharisees, Sadducees, scribes, Herodians, Sanhedrin, council, that's an overview of it. And if you're watching The Chosen, familiar with The Chosen, which I highly recommend, The Chosen is great. Makes you think about things. It's very well done. But Nicodemus is a Pharisee. Okay, Paul was a Pharisee. You could tell who they were by how they dressed. You couldn't dress the way, if you watch The Chosen, the way Nicodemus dresses, you dress that way and you're not a Pharisee, it's like wearing a police uniform. You're not allowed to. You're going to get in trouble. So and it's not Jesus going at it with them. We're back to the text, right? It's not Jesus going at it with them. They were going at it with him. They were attacking him, hanging around like a pack of dogs or a pack of wolves, more accurately. What does a pack of wolves do? If we are a flock of whatever, pick the animal, and there's a pack, we're the flock, there's a pack of wolves around us. What is that pack of wolves doing? They're looking for a weakness. They're looking for an opportunity. They come in and they nip at the heels. They're constant, and that's the picture. Jesus is having to deal with that while he's trying to minister and preach the word and spread the gospel. And that's probably the best way to think of it. And in that confrontation, he wouldn't have avoided it, and it was inevitable. It was inevitable because they knew, because they weren't stupid, okay? They knew how much of a threat he was. It was either his way or their way. So there was going to be confrontation. We got to make progress. So he goes on, he's still dealing with them saying he's working for Satan. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit, right? Apple trees don't grow persimmons. Fig trees don't grow, sour, rotten things that nobody wants to eat. It only makes sense. And that argument right there, I mean, Jesus, can you imagine? Have you ever had that sibling or a family member or somebody at work who's that person who's just, you can't beat them in an argument? You just can't. They can pull data out of wherever. They don't forget anything. They were on the debate team, and they're just calm, cool, and collected about it. And there's no way you're going to win. Now, imagine arguing with God. Imagine trying to catch him in an error. That's what's going on here. So he just does what Jesus does. Jesus looks out the window and sees a tree and says, either, he points out there at the tree, either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. You can't have a mix. What I'm doing, I just kicked a demon out. Before that, you were mad at me because I healed a guy with a withered hand. Those are good things. Satan doesn't do good things. He doesn't. There was no arguing with him. Now he lets him have it. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good when you are evil? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The good person out of his good treasure brings forth good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure brings forth evil. I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Okay. First of all, he calls them a brood of vipers. Now, he's not really going at it with them yet. When you get to, and I highly recommend listening through the book of Matthew. And if you're listening to me on all my different playlists with all the different books we're going through, currently we just finished Exodus, we're doing Joshua, we're doing Matthew, we're doing Revelation. What do I always say? Read the whole thing. Listen to the whole thing. And you might think, I don't have time for that. Well, guess what? Make time for that. How much garbage nonsense is there in your life? Look out the window. The end is here. It's very close. It's right at the door. The world's falling apart. What matters and what doesn't? But it makes, just in practical terms, enough of that little sermonette, it makes everything come together if you just go through the book all within a day or two, listening to it. Do it in chunks, how many ever days it takes, and you can listen to it. That's what makes it so easy. Love YouVersion, download it, use it if you're not familiar with it. But Jesus doesn't really start to lambast them until we get to Matthew 23, 24, 25. He's just, and it might even start in 22. Yeah, 22. Because 21 is Palm Sunday, and he's coming into Jerusalem for the last time. And he's calling them whitewashed tombs. You brood of vipers, you blind leaders of the blind. He's just blasting them. And again, you have to understand, this is parallel to Moses saying the things he said to Pharaoh. With it, same thing here, and I'll make the point. No one ever talked to these guys this way. No one. In The Chosen is portrayed very well. When they freak out, the Pharisees, they're just stunned that John the Baptist called them a brood of vipers. And that's the reference here, Matthew 3, verse 7. John the Baptist called him a brood of vipers. No one talked to these people that way. No one. It wasn't allowed. It was against the rules. Okay. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good when you are evil? He's telling them they're evil. Nobody ever told them they were evil. They thought they were the holiest people in Jerusalem, the holy city. That's what they thought. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And think of that. Do you ever wonder why sometimes some just really nasty stuff comes out of you, directed to somebody you love, somebody you care about, somebody who matters to you? How does that happen? Well, guess what? Your head's not in the right place. Your heart's not in the right place. You've been harboring stuff. And guess what happens? It comes out. It comes out. And that's what he's talking about here. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The good person out of his good treasure, what's inside of us, what's stored up, right? The good stuff the Lord has put there, the things he's taught us, the perspective he's given us, the patience he has all but just buried us with, you know. The good person out of his good treasure brings forth good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure brings forth evil. I tell you, on the day of judgment. And where does he go? Just practical terms. Let's talk about where it really matters, where the rubber meets the road. On the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. Now, I find it fascinating. He just called them a brood of vipers, but then he uses careless word. Would you say that them telling him that he's Beelzebul and that's how he casts out demons, would you say, if I were to give you an option and have a multiple choice and have different things of how to categorize that statement, what's the likelihood that you would categorize that as a careless word? Like they just weren't really thinking it through. Jesus knows it wasn't a careless word. What's he doing? He's being patient. He's being long suffering because it is his desire, even with those who are his complete, total, sworn enemies, he wants to save some. He wants to save some. So he'll go the extra mile. He'll put the best construction on it because he wants to save some. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. If you're in front of a judge and a jury, if you're in front of a judge and a jury, and there's video evidence of you saying things, recordings of you on the phone saying things, can you get out of that? No, it's by your words that you're judged, your own words. And that's what an attorney, a prosecutor would say. You heard it, his own words. That's what he was trying to do, whatever. So what we say, how we say it, we really need to put thought and effort into that. When I say that, am I, in the book of Ephesians, Paul says something very important. And he's talking about dealing with difficult things. And the exact reference is escaping me. I'll pop it up on the screen when I edit this. Speaking the truth in love. Speak the truth in love, right? That's our job. We speak the truth in love. Jesus gets to the point where he's just going to rail on them and let them have it. You know what the difference between Jesus and me is? Well, that was kind of a silly question, wasn't it? I'm not the Lord high God who's going to judge all on the last day. And don't think that when Jesus says that on the day of judgment, he's the one who's doing the judging. He's the one who's separating the sheep and the goats, Matthew 25. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered him. This is their response to him, saying, "Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you." But he answered them, "An evil and adulterous generation seeks a sign, but no sign will be given to it except for the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh, where Jonah went, the men of Nineveh will rise up in judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah. And behold, something greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up in judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, something greater than Solomon is here. There's just so much loaded in here. And again, we have to put in the effort to hear things the way they heard things, because we have to work at that, their context, just like you have a context. If my grandfather were to come back today, first of all, he had a flat top haircut and he was a very conservative guy. He'd look at what's going on and he'd look at me and say, "What the heck did you do? How did you let it get like this?" He's been gone for 35 years. He'd blow a gasket. He wouldn't be able to comprehend what's going on. And even if I was able to give him the context, he probably still would. But he doesn't have the context of everything that's transpired in the 35, 36 years since he was taken home to heaven. He doesn't know all the history of what's gone on. To you, you know it. You just think it. You stop when you're saying something out in public, whatever, you stop and think about how it's going to be perceived through the politically correct hate speech filter. You do. We all do. We all do. Whether we conform to it or not is a different question, but we think about that. My grandfather would say, "What are you talking about?" Wouldn't make any sense to him, okay? Their context, the Pharisees, the scribes who knew the Bible backward and forward, they were experts in the law. They answered him. He's the one, they are the ones that he is going to be responding to. "Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you." They were requesting a sign. You don't request signs. Requesting a sign is a test. Requesting a sign is unbelief. Requesting the sign is taking the hurdle and putting it a couple notches higher and saying, "Jump that." You don't request a sign. Jesus did all kinds of signs. Jesus did all kinds of miracles. He didn't do it to prove anything to anybody. It did prove things, but that's not why he did it. He didn't heal the man who had the shriveled hand to make a point. He healed him because the guy had a shriveled hand and he felt bad for him. He cast the demon out of the guy because he was under the grip of Satan and living literally hell on earth, and he felt bad for him. The guy who was possessed with the demon didn't demand that, but he answered them, "An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign." Now, first of all, this is where the context thing really comes in. Evil and adulterous generation. If you were to take the next few months and just study the monarchy period in Israel and Judah. So from the time of Solomon on, okay, David, Solomon, especially after Solomon with Jeroboam and Rehoboam, his two idiot sons. If you were to study that thoroughly and read the prophets, so we're talking Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Amos, all of that stuff. If you were to study all of that, there is a recurring theme in what God says to them and putting them in their place. And you know what he calls them? An evil and adulterous generation. That's a summation of it. When they heard that, they didn't have to have me explain to them the smack on the face that Jesus was giving them. He just called them the fallen kingdom of Israel. And as Israel, especially, he's referring to the northern kingdom, because where does he go next? He goes to Jonah, who went to Assyria, Nineveh, and Assyria is the nation that wiped out, rubbed out, as the Sioux Indians said, wiped out the northern kingdom, and it never came back. It never came back. That was in 711 BC. An evil and adulterous generation. He railed at them about whoring after other gods and got quite graphic about it in some of the prophets. An evil and adulterous generation, and it's not Sikhs. It's not Sikhs. And just in case anybody's questioning me, I have the irrefutable highest level reference of Greek lexicon here on the screen. If you want to zoom in and look at it, is epizeteo. And in this setting, with the other words that are used, it's demand. They demand a sign. An evil and adulterous generation demands a sign. They asked above, we wish to see a sign from you. He knows it's a demand. And then he refers to Jonah. Already talked about that with the northern kingdom being wiped out, and he's going to give them a sign. He gives them a sign. It's the biggest sign possible. It's the biggest sign he ever gave. Jonah was in the belly of the whale 3 days, so will the Son of Man be in the earth 3 days and rise again. And they're all going to see that. They're all going to see that. And it's fascinating if you do a careful study of the history of Israel and Jerusalem at this time. No one ever denied that it happened. They just tried to cover it up. They just tried to cover it up. So the men of Nineveh, the big city in Assyria, it repented, we're told in the book of Jonah. So here too, Jonah is the Old Testament missionary. He went to the natives, to the hostile enemy, and converted them. Okay? He's the ultimate missionary figure that they have. Okay? And what does he say? Something greater than Jonah is here. And then he refers to the Queen of Sheba, who came and brought all this wealth to Solomon. It was like bringing a feast to the guy who's already at the old country buffet and got all that food. Solomon needed more money, like, I don't know what. He didn't need any more money. She brought it to him anyway because she was amazed at his wisdom. Wisest man who ever lived. The queen in the south will rise up at judgment with this generation and condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, something greater than Solomon is here. You're in a whole other league with me. Jonah was the ultimate missionary. Solomon was arguably the wealthiest, most successful king in Israel. He built the temple. He had all the money. He had peace the whole time that he reigned, and he was the wisest man who ever lived. Jesus is saying, I am greater than them. Jesus is saying, I am who I am. I am he who causes to be. I'm Yahweh. Completely different deal with me. So we kind of have a situation here where they pushed and they pushed and they pushed and they pushed, and here's what you're dealing with. This is who I am. This is who I am. And he doesn't hide or shy away from saying it. For us, we need to make sure when we see this stuff, we want to dig into the setting and the nuances that are here so that we understand it better, because this is your Savior. This is him. You know, these guys who he just in debate chewed up and spit out were the smartest guys around, and they weren't even a challenge for him. But he's not swatting them aside to show that he's tough. He doesn't need to show that he's better than them. He doesn't need to. in how he does it, he's still trying to plead with them. He's saying, you're being like the kingdom of Israel who got wiped out because they were an adulterous and evil generation. Don't be like him. He's speaking the truth in love. Where do you think Paul got the idea? We are going to stop there. Would love to keep going, but we will pick up next time. Please take to heart what I say about listening to the book of Matthew. Take the time to do it. Look at your life, look at the time that you have, how you spend it, and decide what you can cut out. Just like when you need to save money, you look at your budget and say, I don't need to spend $4.50 at Starbucks every day. Hey, I just saved $80 a month. Same thing. Whack some time out of your schedule, spend some time in the Word. Spend some time in your Word, because look out your window, and you look out your window through your phone, your TV, whatever. There is a storm coming. This world is coming apart. I will not soft sell it. And it's far more diabolical than it appears on the surface. It is a great deception taking place. And the only way to ride that storm out, the only way to persevere, is to cling to the rock. And you cling to the rock through the Word. So realign priorities and get in the Word. Get in the Word. All of us, no matter how much time we spend in the Word, we need to spend more time in the Word. Thank you for listening. God bless, and have a great day.